to the panel. I'll bring those to the panel gladly. We do have a question, and I will just read it directly here. For someone who is currently in the process of finding a different post, I've had a couple of Zoom interviews straddling the COVID-19 outbreak. I haven't heard back, but I'm not sure if it's because I've progressed to the next step or if it's because of this outbreak, which it might have stalled or paused the process. Is it best to wait for a response or to follow up? Who wants to take that question?
I can take that
Great.
question. Because I just had a former student actually ask me that exact question. It's a person who is on an assistant professorship position currently, but was looking into moving to a different school, a better school, and the search got suspended, as you know, as it's been going on in many institutions. And so the student was asking me, you know, they asked her if she would want to go on a visiting appointment and then, you know, be a finalist next year. And I said, no, you need to stay where you are. If you have a job, stay where you are. And I think so many Zoom interviews and so many searches are being suspended. So I think it's okay to follow up. I think it's more than appropriate to, you know, ask questions and make sure that you weigh your options, because as everybody's been saying, things are going to be very different and we don't know exactly what kind of impact this is going to have. In my institution, we are hearing about hiring freezes, so we're not sure we're going to be able to have the same searches next year. So I think following up with the institution is more than okay.
Thank you. We can, of course, come back to this topic if more questions arise, but I'm going to move on right now to ways in which tenure track reappointment paths are being possibly impacted. There are, you know, for many of us, canceled gigs and creative work that's been suspended for the time being. So how can we move forward in possibly accounting for these lost gigs? And what can we do right now in the meantime? So Mariana, I think you have some good insight here.
Yeah, I think we all know that spring is a busy time for choral directors. You know, that's when we are involved with conferences and presentations and all state choirs and, you know, honor choirs. And a number of those gigs got canceled, which is frustrating for a lot of us. You know, I've had a number of gigs that were canceled. And I think I would encourage people to be open and talk to the institutions and the organizations that, you know, contracted you in the first place and ask questions about, you know, rescheduling. Don't be afraid to ask to reschedule. I have some gigs that I was able to say, so, you know, I'll come back next year. And some gigs I know they will not be possible to reschedule. And then I think what you need to do is you need to document the invitation. You know, if that's important for your tenure file, make sure that you have documentation that you were invited to do this incredible gig, you know, to begin with, and talk to your, you know, to your mentor at your institution or your administration to see how just the fact that you were invited can count towards your tenure process. You know, I think as Michael mentioned, this year is going to be known as, you know, as the year of the pandemic and things and how it impacted us. So I think it's really important to communicate with your administration and make sure that you have those count in your CV, in your resume, in your documents, and that you can hopefully, you know, do them again some other time.
Here at CU Boulder, about a week ago, we received an email from a vice chancellor saying that those of us who are pre-tenure have the option to suspend or freeze our activity for a year and add another year to, you know, build our portfolios. So I am curious to know, and I know a lot of other places are starting to do this too. I'd be curious to know what the pros and cons are for doing this. Either Kellery or Rollo, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I think that there's certainly pros and cons to this, but I would say before a decision is made, and it's going to be the decision of the faculty member whether or not to push the tenure clock, you know, out another year. I think it's critical that faculty have conversations with their chairs and with their deans to get a really good read from those administrators as to how the faculty member is progressing along their trajectory toward tenure and or promotion, or even if it's third year review. I think getting a read from them will help the faculty member to understand whether or not they are well positioned to go up for tenure at their regularly scheduled time, or if they should perhaps wait a year. Now, to be honest with you, other than waiting a year to get to change ranks and to perhaps get a boost in salary and get promoted, there really is very little of a downside, I think, especially given that when you go up for tenure and promotion, you want to obviously have the strongest dossier possible. And if giving you another year to add even more engagements, more publications, more presentations to that, then you should definitely do that. Some of you may be at institutions where creativity and research is not the focus, or maybe it's the secondary focus. Maybe teaching is the primary focus. And so again, I would encourage those of you who are on the tenure track to talk to your chairs and deans to get a read as to whether they think you would be ready at the appointed time, or if you should take the option to wait another year.
All right, and I'll just add to that. Everything he said is spot on. Well, with regard to those in the tenure process, two-year colleges, the only slight difference is that you want to make sure that you are having communication directly with your dean, so that you know whether or not it's going to impact anything with regard to how we staff moving forward. So that would be a slight difference, I guess, in our process, that you would make sure you need to talk to them and make sure that they have a means to support you. And if you are an online teacher and you've been doing it for a while, maybe the chance now is to shine more. Maybe there are some things in the classroom that you could improve upon, but if you've been shining online, for goodness sake, take the opportunity and go ahead and say, I'll jump in now, go ahead and evaluate me, or go ahead and let me go through the process and complete, because this might be one of the few opportunities, if there's an option to do an online assessment of your work or in class. And they probably wouldn't pick online. They probably want to come to your class, but here they kind of have to. So if that's where you shine, use it and use it to your advantage.
Excellent. And that brings us to the topic of student evaluations. Those tend to be a big part of our portfolios as we work towards reappointment and tenure. Michael, what are you doing? What's happening at Florida State with student evaluations right now?
Well, as Rollo mentioned, it varies depending on the institution how important teaching is in terms of percentage-wise. But of course, we like to think teaching is always, I think very important. And we, of course, want to make sure that we're being represented in the eyes of those student evaluations as fairly and as possible, and that the students are having a chance to, give input in as fair a manner as possible. At Florida State, what we're currently doing, which I think is a reasonable solution. Students are being allowed to still submit evaluations. Obviously, the evaluations themselves will all be still online, and those evaluations are not going to count for tenure portfolios. They will be for the faculty and dean's purpose, or chair's purpose, to get feedback and all of those kinds of things. But it will not be a part of that big package that goes up with you when you go up for tenure. So you'll still get some feedback. It just won't be something that is included in that kind of final reckoning. The one option that people are having here at Florida State, that they're encouraging faculty to do, and if this is an option at other institutions, I think it would probably be a good one, is that faculty are being encouraged, if they're kind of tech savvy enough to figure it out, is to designate a separate question of, this portion of this class was in person, for the first half of the semester. This portion of this class was online, and to ask the students to differentiate between the in-person instruction and the online instruction, because there are going to be some of us, like Kellery said, you know, that are great at online teaching and do that as kind of a matter of their normal position. And there are going to be others of us that frankly aren't as good at it or don't teach classes that really lend themselves well to that situation. And so the opportunity to kind of differentiate that, so you know you're getting feedback from the in-person part versus the online part, and students know they're giving feedback for the in-person part versus the online part. We'll help make that process, I think, you know, as fair and as informative as it can be for people.
Some good feedback over at the chat with the chat function about a lot of student evaluations actually being canceled. So again, if you have any questions that you'd like to address to the panel, please use the Q&A function. Here's an interesting question. So many of us are 40, 40, 20, you know, 40 creative scholarship, 40 teaching, and 20 service. It seems that we are being thrown into doing a lot of service right now, and rightly so. Is this a point of negotiation with administrators for our portfolios? Or is that just, I don't know, it's an interesting question. Who would like to take it?
I think that at least for this particular point in time, there may be a little bit more emphasis placed on teaching and service from the administrative point of view, simply because we know that faculty are probably going to be I guess at a disadvantage when it comes to research and creativity. If their engagements have been canceled, it may be an opportunity for right now, at least for the time being, to place a little bit more emphasis on teaching and service. All I can tell you is that in my neck of the woods, that will be looked upon, I think, and considered favorably, you know, as we have a merit-based system. So I just think that will be taking into account teaching and service, knowing that it is very likely that there'll be a smaller amount of creative and research activity taking place at this particular time.